Hello, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Fatima and welcome to my channel MRCPCH Part 1 for beginners. So today's video is about how to solve the recalls. So solving the recalls actually applies for all the theory exam of MRCPCH, whether you're going for FOP, AKP or TAS exam, you must know how to solve the recalls. So what is the strategy that we need to follow while solving the recalls? In today's video, we'll be studying in detail with example that how to solve the recalls. All right. So, more than 60% in the questions from recalls are actually repeated every year. Like February question about more than 50-60% questions will be repeated. So why is that in spite of the questions being repeated, many brilliant doctors are not able to catch them and many doctors are not able to pass even with multiple attempts. Okay. And many doctors, even though they are thorough with the books and they are not able to solve the recalls. So why does this happen and how you should be if you're a beginner, you're planning to solve the recalls after studying the system, how you should be solving the recalls. Now let me answer you why does this happen and what you should do before starting the recalls. A lot of you might not like this because for some reason people really love shortcuts nowadays. I do not know what is the reason for the shortcuts. They want everything ready, but hard work always pays off. So first of all, you need to have really good understanding about each and every topic given in the recalls. Second thing is that you must know the basic pathognomic features or differentiating point. Third thing is that you must know why this particular option is the answer and why the others are not the answer. You must choose your answer. Also, you must make sure you are excluding the other options. All right. This is the strategy you need to follow. Now, let me show you some examples. All right. All right. So today we are going to study now how to solve the recalls. This particular recall I have taken from AKP recall files and I found this to be very suitable because it has a lot of options for us to exclude and study how we should be solving the recalls. All right. So at first, let us read the question. What do we have here? A 4-year-old. I always mark or highlight the points that I have read. Okay. So what do we have? A 4-year-old with increasing thirst, admitted with drowsiness and behavioral changes, with foster parents, GCS is 10, had labored breathing and nystagmus, BP is 120 by 75, sodium 165, potassium 3.8, chloride 120, bicarbonate 18, glucose 6.7, urine osmolarity 840, 850. So 850 milliosmol per liter. So first of all, after reading the questions, you must know to highlight, you must always remember to highlight or write down the important topics. This is not during exam, this is when you're practicing. All right, this is better if you're doing this while practicing. So we have a 4-year-old comes to us and coming to us with increasing thirst. So mainly he's coming to us with polydipsia. And along with that, he's coming with drowsiness, GCS is low, it's 10. It's slightly low and his blood pressure is quite high as compared to his age. And if you look at on the investigation that is on the electrolytes, his sodium is pretty high, his chloride is high, whereas his potassium is normal. All right, his glucose is normal, but his bicarbonate is reduced. And the urine osmolarity. What is the normal urine osmolarity? Normal urine osmolarity, as much as I can remember, is about 600 to 800. So urine osmolarity is also pretty high. So urine osmolarity is high. So we have a 4-year-old coming to us with drowsiness, behavioral changes, increasing polydipsia. Along with that, BP is high and we have some electrolyte findings. Now, as I told you, you must know why this is the answer and why all the other options are not your answer. Okay, because really generous seniors have given us the question as well as answer. So you must not only be memorizing this, you must know why this is the answer and you should have a very clear idea about why others are not the answer. So how can you do that? You must have good idea about each of this topic provided. You must know the pathognomic features. You must know how to differentiate between them. Okay, so let me show this to you in the whiteboard and let me transfer this, exclude this options one by one, how you should be studying. So let us go to the whiteboard. All right. So let me review again. So we have seen A 4-year-old has come to us with polydipsia. All right, and his BP was slightly high, drowsiness, behavioral changes. And the options given where I'm going to write down the options. With each option, I'm going to exclude. So the first option given was renal tubular acidosis. So why they did not choose renal tubular acidosis? Why is that this is not a case of renal tubular acidosis? So what happens is that a child with renal tubular acidosis, he can present to us with polyuria, polydipsia, but what will be the electrolyte findings in renal tubular acidosis? We have hyponatremia, hyponatremia in renal tubular acidosis, hypokalemia, but hyperchloremia. Chloride is very, very high in renal tubular acidosis. But what do we have here? What is the finding that we got here? We got hypernatremia, hyperchloremia, normal potassium. So does this match with renal tubular acidosis? This is the finding that we got in our boy, in our patient 4-year-old boy. And this is the finding of RTA, hyponatremia, hypokalemia, but hyperchloremia along with metabolic acidosis. So does this electrolyte findings match with our findings? No. Therefore, renal tubular acidosis is not our answer. All right. Now, what is the next option? The next option they have given here is nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. So what happens in diabetes insipidus? There is decreased amount of antidiuretic hormone. When the antidiuretic hormone is low, the body will not be able to reabsorb water. Therefore, huge amount of water will be lost. Okay, so as a result, we will find hypernatremia, but the urinary osmolarity will be very low because the body is producing huge amount of dilute urine. Whereas in our portion, we saw urine osmolarity is 850. So if this was a case of nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, we would find hypernatremia, all right, but we would find urine osmolarity to be very, very low. It will produce dilute urine. Moreover, nothing explains the hypertension here, along with the other electrolyte findings. So since it is not matching, our answer is not nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Okay, so I have excluded two options. RTA is out and nephrogenic diabetes insipidus is out. All right. Now let me look into the third option. What is the third option given? The third option says psychogenic. So psychogenic polydipsia. What happens? What is psychogenic polydipsia? Basically, this occurs when a person drinks excessive amount of water. Psychogenic polydipsia. But the patient with psychogenic polydipsia, they will have the electrolytes will be absolutely normal, almost normal. Along with that, the urine osmolarity will be very, very low. They will produce dilute urine. They will drink huge amount of water as well as they will excrete huge amount of water via urine. But in this case, look, we have very high urine osmolarity. This does not match with our scenario. Also, the electrolytes in our scenario are pretty abnormal. Whereas in this case, in case of if it was psychogenic polydipsia, we would find electrolytes to be absolutely normal. All right. Therefore, this is not a case of psychogenic diabetes, psychogenic polydipsia. All right. So we have excluded renal tubular acidosis. We have excluded nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. We have excluded psychogenic polydipsia. Now let us exclude the other options. All right. And at last, I'll come to you with the correct option. Next, we have the correct option. I'll skip that. Next, we have primary hyperaldosteronism. That means there will be excessive amount of aldosterone in the body. When aldosterone is very high, that causes hypernatremia, that causes increased water and sodium reabsorption, as well as it decreases the potassium reabsorption. Therefore, we will find hypernatremia along with that hypokalemia. And yes, hypernatremia along with increased water can cause hypertension. But in this case, look at our case. We have got a hypernatremia, but our potassium is absolutely normal. Aldosterone will cause excretion of potassium. So if this was a case of primary hyperaldosteronism, it would lead to hypernatremia, hypokalemia, which is not the case. This is our case. All right. So this is not a case of primary hyperaldosteronism. All right. Now let us move to the next option. The next option says type 1 diabetes mellitus. So first of all, how does the child with type 1 diabetes mellitus present to us? Usually type 1 diabetes mellitus present with weight loss as compared to weight gain in type 2. Along with that, child may present with polyuria, polydipsia. All right, this child has come to us with polydipsia. Now, why this is not type 1 diabetes? If you look at the glucose, most likely they have given the RBS. It is 6.7, absolutely normal. All right. So since the glucose is normal, we are excluding diabetes mellitus completely out of our scenario. So we have excluded RTA, nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, psychogenic polydipsia, primary hyperaldosteronism, and we have excluded diabetes mellitus. Now let us come to another option, SIAD. What is SIAD? SIAD means syndrome of inappropriate ADH. That means there will be excessive amount of ADH. This is exactly opposite of diabetes insipidus, where there is lack of ADH. In CR, there is excessive amount of ADH. As a result, the body is going to reabsorb huge amount of water. Actually, antidiuretic hormone only has action on water, not on the electrolyte. So since it absorbs huge amount of water, there will be apparently dilutional effect, and that will lead to hyponatremia, hypochloremia, all the electrolytes, hypokalemia, all the electrolytes will be low. All right. And yes, urine osmolarity would be high because the body is trying to reserve all the water. As a result, the urine concentration will be very, very high. So, all right, this is good. But our scenario says that we have hypernatremia, hyperchloremia. Therefore, our scenario that is given in the question is not matching with syndrome of inappropriate ADH. So this is not our answer. All right. So I've excluded all the options. Now let me look for the correct option. Why they have chosen salt poisoning? So salt poisoning is basically intentional salt poisoning, or maybe, it's a inflicted salt poisoning. So why is this the answer? What happens is that when there is salt poisoning, there will be increased amount of electrolyte salt. Sodium chloride will increase in the serum. And since sodium is increased, and that will increase the sodium always moves with water. Therefore, the water content will also increase along with sodium. As a result, what happens? The blood pressure increases. So there is increased sodium, increased chloride. All right. Second thing is that the body will drive. So as a result, what is happening to the serum osmolarity? The serum osmolarity is becoming very, very high due to excessive amount of sodium chloride. It's becoming very salty. But what happens to the urine? Since it is salt poisoning, the body always try to compensate. Any condition that results in our body as pathological or as a disease is beyond repair by the body, only then it leads to a disease. So here the body tries to compensate by excreting huge amount of sodium chloride via urine. And as a result, since sodium chloride is excreted in the urine, what happens is that the urinary osmolarity, the salt in urine, will be very, very high. So what do we have? So in spite of excreting, the body is not able to compensate. So what do we see here? We see that increased serum osmolarity, that is increased salt in the blood and increased salt in the urine. Increased salt means increased serum osmolarity, increased urinary osmolarity. You will see that this is the exact scenario that is there in our question. So we have increased salt, increased sodium, we have increased sodium here, increased chloride, as well as urine osmolarity is very high. Even in case of salt poisoning, there will be increased sodium chloride, serum osmolarity is high, and urine osmolarity is also very high. So our answer is salt poisoning, where both the options are matching with salt poisoning. Whereas in the other options, either one or one of the findings were matching, not all the options. Whereas in this case, all the options are matching. So most likely this 4-year-old boy had been poisoned with salt, sodium chloride, and that is the reason of this finding. Now, why is it very important that I have excluded all the points? in exam, they might change the findings of the electrolytes. Okay. And it might be very difficult for you because you have, if you go for memorizing the recalls, in your mind it is just salt poisoning, but they can reduce the concentration of sodium, and we can reduce the concentration of chloride in exam. So when I say about more than 60% of the recalls are repeated in the exam, yes, it is repeated, but they always change the framing of the questions. And it looks so convincing in the framing is so convincing that even if you know the answer, for a moment you might feel like, okay, no, that could be the answer. All right. So that is the reason you need to have a very, very strong base about each of the options. So if you are studying, for example, these all topics were from nephrology and endocrinology. If you are studying these topics, you have to be very much thorough about what will be the finding in RTA, what will be the finding in case of nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, what will be the finding in case of CAD, what will be the finding in case of primary hyperaldosteronism. You have to be very thorough with each topic, only then it will be easy. I see a lot of doctors, even doctors in my batch, some of my doctors, they become so anxious, and that they keep posting the recalls in different groups, or in the group, and they keep asking about the recalls, what is the answer, what is the answer. So yes, some of the recalls, you fail to find the answers, that's all right, you can ask somebody. But without understanding, if you do not know how to correlate, then you'll keep on asking people, you will never get it. And yes, people will answer you, they're really generous people, they'll answer you in the group. And but you will never learn it in the exam. The scenarios will be completely changed, the framing will be completely changed, then you'll feel like, okay, I have not read this recall, whereas this was actually the recall that was there in the previous year. So but you did not recall, you did not correlate it. So that is the reason, whenever you are studying, make sure you're correlating everything, and you have a very strong understanding that why this is one answer, why that is not the answer. Especially if you go for FOP tasks, why this method it's really good. And for AKP, this is an excellent method of excluding all the options. This was taught to me by one of my dearest friend, and he taught me that why you should be choosing this option. While you study this option, you should also know why these other options are not the answer. All right. If you learn this, for learning this, obviously you need to go through the books, you need to have a very strong, you know based on the basics. So yeah, it should be very, very easy to you, inshallah. It should be easy and you should be able to pass the exam. All right. And when I say about reading books, you don't have to read a lot of books. There are certain books given in the RCPCH website, certain books, a lot of people have suggested. You can just follow the books, make your own notes. If you're not making your own notes, are totally fine, but you must have an idea that this is the way how to solve recalls. A lot of doctors come to me, and they are absolutely brilliant doctors. I get to learn a lot from them. And but I just happen to be I happen to learn how to solve recalls, and they come to me and they say that, we don't know how to solve this, we find it really difficult. So because this is a bit tricky one, you must know how to solve this recall. Once you learn this method, it is going to pay really well. Like, it's going to be really good for your long term. You'll be really satisfied after the exam. Okay. So that's it for about today's video. Let me know if you like the video, and let me know what are the other videos you would want me to make. And thank you, everybody.